Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show, a Baxter Professional Services production. Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show, where we're experts in nursing and experts in business. I am Tina Baxter, your host. The Nurse Shark Academy Show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. Today's guest is Ben Biddick, and today's episode, How One Nurse Who Served Our Country Helps Others Heal from Trauma.
And whenever y'all decide to invest in enough financial opportunities for people who want to come work here and create an environment that has a healthy culture and meets the needs of the people that we're serving, then when you do that, then I'll punch out when I have sufficient relief. Like these are the things where that empathy, that burnout, all of these things get balanced, and that's what I found was the thing that kept me going, or kept me returning to the shifts, or kept me serving the clientele, was how are they suffering and how can I help relieve it? And if that takes me staying up a little later, working when I'm tired, navigating all these challenges and things like that, then, and certainly there's a point where I have to engage in self-care, otherwise I'll just implode and my health will stop. But it was a situation where it was like, where you give, and what keeps you giving beyond your tiredness, beyond your stress, beyond your own comfort, is one where you're creating these outcomes where they look at you with gratitude and respect, and you share moments in time together that helps relieve their suffering.
Break free and come feel the sun with the Nurse Shark Academy. Nurses, are you ready to break free from the grind and build something of your own? It's time to take your skills beyond the bedside and step into entrepreneurship. Join our free webinar, Break Free, the Nurse's Path to Entrepreneurship, where you'll learn how to shift your mindset, explore nurse-owned business ideas, and get the exact steps to launch your own business. This is your time to take control of your career and create a future you love. Seats are limited, so grab yours now. Join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz. Break free and come feel the sun with the Nurse Shark Academy. And welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. The Nurse Shark Academy Show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. We interview nurse leaders and encourage them to tell their story. My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining the confidence, skills, and freedom to live your life on your own terms. You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Join us and support these wonderful nurse entrepreneurs and leaders. Today's guest is Ben Biddick of Well Public and Human Capital VIP out of Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you so much, Tina. It's an honor to be here. Very excited.
Great. Now, I always ask every guest when we first start out, because we think this is so important to hear your nursing story. So what made you become a nurse?
Sure. So when I was very young, I was interested in everything. So I wanted to pick something that I could do a variety of different things with. And obviously, as a nurse, you have a wide gamut of options available to you. If you learn some expertise in one field, you can focus on another. And being a nurse was very optimum when it comes to being flexible, when it comes to learning new things, when it comes to growing, being a lifelong learner, because there's so many different ways that you can serve others. So that was ideal for me. At that time, the world was basically responding to 9/11. The world was figuring out all the changes that had occurred in those moments. People were navigating a myriad of emotions. The world was dealing with challenges that had not been dealt with prior to 9/11. And so what happened on that day kind of altered my trajectory. I had thought about joining the military at some points in growing up. At times I thought there's no way I would ever do that. At other times I was very interested in doing that. But 9/11 happened, and on that morning I received a phone call from my brother, who lived in New York and worked in the building right across the street from one of the towers. And he said, make sure you turn your TV on. I'm fine. I'll call you when I can. And so obviously turned on the TV and saw what was happening. that led to my decision that I wanted to contribute to a safer world, and I wanted to be a part of a response where a different reality could occur, where there wasn't terrorist attacks happening, and wanting to prevent that from happening again in the United States. So I joined the military as a combat medic, and was offered an option to get some nursing training in addition to the medic training, and took it. So that led to the odyssey of experiences that came from being a nurse.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. And as I told a previous veteran, thank you for your service twice. And I say that to say because much like with 9/11, the pandemic was a visceral shock to the nation. And the very first time that someone had asked me about what I did, and I said I was a nurse, and they looked at me and said, "Thank you for your service." And I'm like, wait, what? I'm not in the military. But it felt like we were at war.
So true.
And I think we're going to see a lot more studies come out to show about the PTSD and things like that that nurses have gone through. But that was the very first time that someone actually thanked me for being a nurse. I'm used to getting the other stuff. I mean, peers thank you, right? But I work in psychiatry, so thank you wasn't coming very often. It was other things. And so I think 9/11 was a very big shock to a lot of us. And I admire the people that took that and decided to join the military. I know a lot of people who did do that. I was already a nurse at that point, so my job was as a volunteer.
Yeah,
so I was one of the volunteers with the Red Cross to go to Ground Zero. So just it was a very interesting time. To be in New York, and originally I was supposed to go to the Pentagon, but they changed me at the last minute. There was a lot of security concerns during that time, so I can imagine. I'm so glad your brother made it out okay, because I've heard stories about people during my time there and working with the people who survived, but nothing was ever the same for them. We had a woman that was injured by some falling debris from one of the planes, like propellers or something. And it just kind of sheared the back half of her off. Horrendous injuries. She was set to get married, and her fiance walked away because he couldn't deal. Yeah.
Tremendous suffering.
So in the face of that, for people who step up, I applaud you.
Well, I applaud you as well, and the honor. It was an honor to serve, and whenever people express their gratitude, I am grateful for them for doing that, and I take that gratitude and I say thank you for honoring that, and I hand it right over to the families of those whose loved ones didn't come home on those days. And it often is a healthy way for us all to give a deep bow to those who are no longer with us, and to those who experienced that suffering, and then to honor those, and to have the honor of giving to those who have dealt with severe losses. And I loved what you said about the post-traumatic stress during the pandemic, and also dealing with the post-traumatic stress of so many people who dealt with some severe trauma during these time frames. You're so right. And the studies show that post-traumatic stress comes when two things are paired, right? A feeling of helplessness paired with a sense of extreme terror or horror. It's something very awful that they're experiencing. And certainly day in and day out, seeing people struggling to breathe from the COVID virus to all of the violence and trauma that occurred on our shores and overseas, and so much of the support staff who participate during during experiences of war who tend to the wounds that come from violence often have that psychological trauma, and it's often the support staff who are on the receiving end of experiencing all the toll that comes from that violence, high rates of PTSD. So I really honor, especially your service in psychiatry, especially your service of serving as a Red Cross volunteer during a chaotic and intense period of our history, and a dynamic and kinetic time where we didn't know what was coming next. So I give you a bow of honor and respect too for all of that you have done to make our world a safer and kinder place.
I say thank you, but I have to say, what struck me is when you're talking about the trauma that the first responders and the combat medics that experience, because you're patching up someone and sometimes sending them back out to possibly get re-injured again.
Right.
And there's so much that goes on with that. And as a person who works in psychiatry, we hear some pretty horrific stories.
Yep.
Of trauma, abuse. I remember there was a girl, an adolescent girl, whose family was in a ritualistic cult that was sexually abused. And it was just some really horrible things. And as nurses, we kind of hold all of that.
Right.
And have to figure out then how to manage that, compartmentalize that, when you're supposed to always be empathetic and giving and giving and giving. And yet you wonder who's going to give back to you. And so then we go and we turn to other things and we get involved, or we just burn out, right?
That's it.
And so, I've had some burnout professionals here on this show. And one of the things that it brings up is we're so tired of hearing about you got to be resilient.
Yep.
Yeah. How about we make some changes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want some of our listeners to really understand, because I'm kind of fascinated being that you're in the military during that period of time. And I know that there's certain things that you cannot talk about, but I want to know, I work with a lot of veterans, by the way.
Yeah.
So I know there's certain things you can't talk about, even to your psychiatric provider. You're not allowed to say what really happened. But what was it like to be a medic and a nurse at that time? Because I want to, because there may be someone who's thinking about going into the military, thinking about how they can serve. I had another guest, and she was a military nurse for several years as well, and really enjoyed her time. I think she was in the Navy. And so what was it like for you? Because I want people to understand what it was like to be in that position.
Sure. So one of the things that really stands out as I reflect on that time, just tremendous friendships, tremendous sense of purpose. You're a part of something that's bigger than you. So there's a lot of really quality values that are associated with that you experience. That is not often experienced in the civilian world. I think basically concepts where you genuinely have leadership that want you to be your very best and succeed, because you having more skills, being greater at what you do, demonstrating excellence, you're literally contributing to a mission that is satisfying, engaging. You're willing to gladly offer up, working if you need to 20-hour shifts or whatever it is. And we can talk about burnout certainly, but when you're filled with a sense of purpose like that, and everyone is working together to achieve an outcome that is extremely noble, that is something that is very revered by a team, you get cohesion there that goes above and beyond. You love one another truly. And a lot of the times you don't get that in civilian environments, where it's basically, healthcare for money.
Yeah.
overall, and a lot of billboards of different healthcare organizations will say, compassion, and they'll say all these things. But we get into the business of American healthcare, and there's a lot of questions about that, especially how staffs are treated and expectations of how the whole animal works with regard to American healthcare. But not to get into that too much at this point, the thing that I think of as far as the military experience during my tenure and I was in from 2002 until 2010. And during that period, one thing as I reflect on it, the main point was people in leadership and your peers were all really committed to helping everyone be their very best. And that type of cohesion and selflessness and honor, that was something that I think I will always treasure, and that it was kind of a rude awakening in transitioning into different civilian side healthcare situations, because that wasn't necessarily there. A lot of vindictiveness or ego driven situations, and people jealousy, different things where it didn't always seem that the goal was for us all to be our very best to relieve the suffering of others. It was a very pure experience in that moment in history. And as far as those who want to potentially or are considering joining the military, I would encourage you to make the most of that opportunity, because so much of it is geared towards getting you everything you need to do to succeed. But there's also, like you said, huge challenges there. There's a lot of sexual assault. There is a lot of trauma. There's a lot of really horrific things that happen because people are under stress and people are experiencing some pretty intense power. When you're a non-commissioned officer, or you're an officer and you're leading troops, or you're leading human beings into highly stressful environments, we know what stress does to people. And oftentimes people are not empowered to manage that stress in a healthy way. And when the mission comes first, oftentimes that creates power situations between people that lead to really horrific experiences as well. So my experience of that positivity and that team cohesion and all of that things, I know that's not the experience of everyone. Oftentimes people go in, are assaulted, have had really awful experiences at the hands of those who are supposed to be their most powerful advocates. There's some of their protectors, some people in powerful positions who abuse that. So being aware of all that, you need to be very wise in the choices that you make, and then in protecting yourself and advocating for yourself in situations where you very often are just a number, and you need to really practice self-care, protection, and be wise about who you align yourself with.
What I find interesting is I had a conversation with a nurse who was the person who started the sexual assault nurse examiner program for the military. And as part of our conversations, we were talking about the difference between commissioned and being non-commissioned. And so I remember being a nursing student getting ready to graduate, and the recruiters are always there, when you're getting ready to graduate. And they're like, we'll make you a commissioned officer and we'll give you a MASH unit, just like MASH. And he had a great sell, but I was like, sorry, sir, I'm getting married. And my husband fiance is getting out of the military. So I know a little bit more about that. And my dad was in the Army. My dad actually loved being in the Army. He was stationed in Germany and he loved it. And so for him, that was a good time. But it was close to Vietnam. So he was almost deployed to Vietnam. And just when he was about to be deployed, the war ended. My uncle was in the Korean War.
Wow.
I was never quite the same from being in the Korean War. This is a man that slept with his eyes open, which was really creepy as a child.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't wake him up. You let him gradually wake up.
Yeah. Oh man, my kids know, if I'm sleeping, and you're trying to wake me up, step at a distance and just be very gentle about it and be careful, because I have a lot of those startle reflexes and that jolting and this and that.
Mhm.
So that they know, and sudden loud noises, like that, you don't just turn the blender on, you give a warning, hey, there's about to be loud noises, things like
Yes,
that.
yes. It's so funny. As nurses, we deal with so much. And I remember I was working in the inpatient psychiatry unit and I had to have surgery. So they put me out. And I just remember coming to and I was thinking, I hurt all over. Part of it was because of the type of surgery they had to, put some gas in my stomach and all that kind of stuff. So I
Mhm.
was bloated with
Mhm.
that. And I just remember thinking, either I've been in a very bad car wreck or a
Mhm.
patient beat me and I said shit, beat the shit out of me. So I was coming to and I said, what happened? And they're
Mm.
like, you just had surgery. I was like, oh, I thought I got beat up by a patient. And they're all looking at each other like, what? And then the other nurse goes, she works at the Anderson Center. You're like, oh.
Oh, it all makes sense. Yeah.
Because that was my
Right.
first thought. I was like, somebody's beat me up. I'm like, oh my gosh, what
No.
happened?
Yeah.
And it was I had
Yeah.
surgery.
Yeah. Psychiatry is no joke, man. Respect. Yeah.
I've been punched in the face by a Huntington's
Oh,
patient over a cookie.
wow. Yeah. I did a clinical rotation at, I won't say the location, but, um, certain realities that they would talk about was like, you don't turn your back on people in
Mm,
this unit. And they had
mm,
recounted how a psychiatrist had been documenting, doing notes or documenting, client visits and things like that on the unit. And one of the patients had taken a fire extinguisher off the wall and basically um, hit him with it over the head, and basically he was in a vegetative state after that. And so there's some pretty intense lessons that can be learned, and super respect to people who day in and day out serve people with severe and persistent mental illness. It is a tremendous service and and volatile, risky.
yes, it can
Hmm.
be. I
Yeah,
have another show and we talk about some of the challenges that we face in nursing. And
yeah,
there's home care is another very stressful situation because you're going in someone's home and you don't know what's going to be in there. You know what's
that's
waiting
it.
for you behind that door. And so I
That's it.
cover some of those news stories of things that are happening because I want people to know, hey, take care of yourself. Be
Yep,
careful as nurses.
absolutely.
So I appreciate your insights into all of this, and I think it's important that we get a chance to talk about not just the negative parts of nursing, but the good parts as
Sure,
well, and to share our
absolutely.
nursing story. So then
Right.
let's fast forward to you're out of the military, you're doing your civilian life as a nurse. How did you go from working as a nurse to entrepreneurship? How did that come about?
Well, it stemmed back, I think, to a certain degree with that interest in everything. I never, one career path. It was hard to fulfill everything that I was interested in, so I was always learning. And that's the cool thing about nursing. You're dealing with people from all sorts of different backgrounds and experiences. You're constantly learning different things, and so I love hearing people's stories. Hearing these things that people have been through and overcoming adversity, just seeing all the things and the human dynamics. And one thing that was extremely interesting to me all along was how do people respond to these trauma histories? How do people respond? How do they get to the point where we're talking in an ER at 3 in the morning, and whether they've just tried to harm themselves, and then they recount this tremendous history of abuse, neglect, horrific poverty, different things that they've experienced all along. And I worked in crisis for a number of years. I worked doing. I would talk with people who are incarcerated. I would talk with people who were dealing with mental health challenges, and so much of that goes back to a trauma history, to childhood, into combat, into just sexual assault to cancer treatment to all of these forms of adversity, I would just became very curious about how do people survive it? How do they get here? And we have this conversation, and basically we're having this intense moment where we're connecting as human beings. They're telling their story of suffering because I'm just active listening. I'm just here to provide presence. We're going to be here for hours. We might as well we might as well understand certain things. And that's what provided me with the ability then to give quality patient care, because I was getting to the point where I'm understanding in depth what they've been through, where they're coming from, what they're concerned about, what they're scared of, what triggers that they have, so I don't unwittingly trigger them on something. By listening, we start that whole process of healing. And sometimes people don't even understand the significance of just not providing any solutions whatsoever, and the treatment being just listening. That alone can save a life at certain points, and particularly those who come in or who are combative or who are struggling or coming off of different chemicals in their bodies that they've put in there or been exposed to willingly or unwillingly. All of these things get us to a point where it all starts, I think, with listening and hearing their experiences with compassion, with empathy as we're able to. And that's the thing. I remember I was working at a county jail. I won't disclose which one. And the nursing staff was always short. They were always calling, please come work, please come in, this and that. And they didn't have enough people and all this. And I remember I worked a 20-hour shift, and the person involved or in compliance or involved in the payment and some of the HR stuff said, hey, you forgot to punch out. You were missing a punch on your timesheet or whatever. And I was like, no. He's like, wait a second, I don't think that's legal. And I'm like, well, I can't leave. These patients need insulin. You need to hire people. Like, I'm not just going to leave. Like, I was here. I stayed on. I did what I needed to do to provide the care that I needed to give to these people. And whenever y'all decide to invest in enough financial opportunities for people who want to come work here and create an environment that has a healthy culture and meets the needs of the people that we're serving, then when you do that, then I'll punch out when I have sufficient relief. These are the things where that empathy, that burnout, all of these things get balanced. And that's what I found was the thing that kept me going, or kept me returning to the shifts, or kept me serving the clientele, was how are they suffering and how can I help relieve it? And if that takes me staying up a little later, working when I'm tired, navigating all these challenges and things like that, then, and certainly there's a point where I have to engage in self-care, otherwise I'll just implode and my health will stop. But it was a situation where it was like, where you give, and what keeps you giving beyond your tiredness, beyond your stress, beyond your own comfort, is one where you're creating these outcomes where they look at you with gratitude and respect, and you share moments in time together that helps relieve their suffering. And those are the things that I will carry to my grave, of saying that was a day well lived, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have served. I don't care that I was tired. I don't care that they needed somebody, and I had the honor of being the person that could meet their need at that point. And but now in some of the roles that I do, where I have oversight over nursing staffs or over people who are working, or social workers who are facing these types of challenges, where the need is this big and the resources being devoted is only this big. I can be their advocate. I can say it's not okay for our staff to burn themselves out, and we need to provide that change that you were talking about. Not just, hey, go meditate for 5 minutes, but let's do the meditation if that's helpful for you. But at the same time, we as an organization have a duty and a respect. And if we're going to have employees that are retained and that we have loyalty for, we're going to create an environment that pays them well, that honors their needs, that doesn't expect them to work a 20-hour shift and just say, suck it up, buttercup. But we're going to create environments where they have longevity and consistency of service because they're cared for, they're respected, they're valued, and they're empowered to do what makes them engaged, excited, and draws them back to come back for their next shift in a happy and healthy way, where they have family relationships that they can actually spend time with their loved ones and be there for their children's events and attend the parade that they're in at school, and are participating in that. When we do that for our public servants, especially our nurses, then you get loyalty. You get these honorable people coming to work with gratitude and who do selfless things all day, and then you gain their loyalty. You retain the staff. You don't have turnover. You don't have as much PTSD in their life that they're experiencing, which only compounds their relationships, significant relationships falling through, divorce, mental illness themselves, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. When we care for each other and we don't allow that to happen, and we stop worrying so much about whether we make 15 billion or 16 billion, and we actually take care of the people that who are providing the service that makes you those billions, then we get somewhere. It's just about honoring people and their service and their sacrifice, and it makes human sense and it makes business sense. So let's stop lying to everybody about the realities of things, and let's pay these people and value them. And it's not just about payment, it's about creating that balance where they're not working 20-hour shifts. And it's about respecting them. Ultimately, the way I view it is, if we're in healthcare, we should be demonstrating values of health in what we do and how we treat people. Otherwise, it's kind of a sham, and it's pretty tragic to not have healthcare companies who are giving their employees what they need to be their very best and their most healthy. But that's my rant. My rant is over.
You know what? There's two things I was thinking about this. One is, remember the company Saturn?
Yes.
Everybody wanted to work for Saturn because their benefits were great. They treated their employees so well. And I was like, why can't we get to that type of level of culture in healthcare? And
Right.
I remember I was a newer nurse, and they changed some of our benefits at the hospital. And we had the worst deductible of anybody in this city. And I said, wow, I work here. Why isn't my health care free?
Right.
I work for you. Why wouldn't you take care of your employees? But we had the worst plans of any.
Ridiculous.
It was just like, why? And and we work for a nonprofit hospital. Have to run a nonprofit hospital that talked about dignity for the poor. And I'm like, so you want us to stay poor? That's the idea.
Yeah, that's the message being sent. Like, come on now. Like, please. Like, this is a healthcare organization. Are we demonstrating the realities of healthcare? Like, are we looking at the research of what makes people healthy and translating those realities to our staff? Because if we do that, guess what? Our staff are going to be healthy. Our staff are going to be happy. They're going to have great relationships. They're going to be paid well. They're going to experience a sense of appreciation and value. And guess what? They're going to extend that to your customers, who are your patients. So the first question coming in the door is, what hurts? How are you doing? Are you okay? How can we help? Instead of, do you have insurance? What is it? What does it cover? It's like, come on now. Come on, we're a healthcare company. Let's be healthy.
I think it's ironic that they give us paid time off, but yet refuse to let you use it. I just think that's just, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops.
That's it.
To have your time off. I'm all for making sure the unit's covered and people working stuff out and saying, hey, look, I'm taking time off here. Can you cover here? I'll cover you there. I get that. I think that makes total sense. But what I don't get is are you taking time off again?
Exactly.
Or having to,
right.
Where are you going? What are you doing? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Absolutely. Your benefit package affords me this.
Yes.
You're parading it around, saying to everybody in the public on your billboards, etc., look at all the great things we do for our employees. But now you're shaming me for using the benefits that you're allotting me, that human resources says I'm allowed to use. So
Mm-hmm.
why are you shaming and manipulating and coercing me to feel this way when I'm trying to utilize the benefits that you parade around as a reason to work here, as a reason for my loyalty? So it's like, come on, have some integrity, like leadership,
Mm-hmm.
like
You know
hire
what's
a couple
so
more people.
so funny? When I was working, I had this manager, and she would call you all the time and beg you to work and manipulate you into working, to where I got to, this is before caller ID, I got to taking the phone off the hook.
Yep.
And I told my husband, do not hang up that phone. And one day he did, and he goes, oh, so and so's on the phone. I was so mad.
Yeah.
I
Oh
told him,
yeah.
I'm not here.
Yep.
I am not here.
That's it.
I don't like to lie,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I am not here. So I
Yep.
would know during certain hours, particularly when I was trying to sleep, the phone
Yep.
is off the hook because I was a night
Yep.
shift nurse. The phone is
That's
off the
right.
hook. I am not answering the phone. I am not going to work. I would purposely go out shopping. This is before we had cell phones. I would go
Yep.
out shopping and leave
Mhm.
my beeper at home, oh, on
Yep.
accident, so they couldn't get
Yep.
a hold of me.
Yep. And
Yeah,
it's a shame that people have to go to that length to get the time off that they need to be a healthy human being when they work in healthcare. Right?
exactly.
And it's like it's laughable, but it's not, because I mean, what, the people who are in the mix of that right now literally are just trying to sleep. They're
Hmm.
literally, they work night shift. Their circadian rhythms are already blown
Hmm.
into all sorts of disarray. They're doing their very best, and now we're blowing them up in the middle of, like, do we, you know, people talk about, if you work day shift, you wouldn't get a call from your supervisor at midnight saying, hey, this and that. Like, why are we calling them at noon in the morning when it's their midnight? Or like, but anyway, all the details of that is
Hmm.
so, and when we stack trauma on top of that, and when we stack the inability to take time off and pressures, and it's that mid-level manager that is in that hellish reality because they're trying to
Yes.
staff a unit, and they're trying to kiss the asses of the leadership so that they can advance or do whatever they do or get their paycheck, and they're trying to adhere to the company line, and they're trying to be the one, and they're caught in this hell because they have to look the people in the face who are expending, exhausting themselves, who are coming to work day in and day out. They're calling them, calling them. And how many of those mid-level managers are working the floor? How many of those mid-level managers saying, hey, take that time off. I know you're exhausted. I got it. I'll take it. How many of them are going in at 3 a.m. to cover a split shift, or to ensure that their staff are getting the rest that they need, or are at their wedding, or can go to their honeymoon, or can attend their child's sports event, or attend their child's, like, thing that they're doing it, where that they're super proud of, that, I love that meme that was circulating around, on social media not too long ago, of, the only people who will remember that you worked that 24-hour shift, or the only people who will remember that you stayed late, worked hard, were the first one there and the last one to leave. The only ones who will remember that are your kids.
Yeah.
Management isn't gonna,
Hmm.
unless you have supremely awesome leadership who pays attention to these details, is highly attuned to the pulse of their staff. I mean, this is my expectation of leadership, is that, you're if you're not viewing your employees, your staff, as the most vital resource of your healthcare company, then you're wrong. If you're not in tune with every member of your staff, how they're doing outside of work stuff, are they caregivers? In the state that I live in, 1 in 4 job applicants who are applying for any job, whether it's healthcare or not, are full-time caregivers of a family member with a developmental disability, or a aging related change like dementia. So these people have a full-time job outside of work where they're caring for another human being. And if anybody knows how challenging dementia care is, especially for those who are in advanced stages of that, if
Mm-hmm.
people and leadership of organizations knew the intensity of what that caregiving does and what it requires from people, and they're applying for a job that they're trying to get benefits for, that if they're carrying the benefits, it oftentimes has a direct impact on what's happening with the person that they're caregiving for. If it's a child of theirs, these are vital healthcare needs. These are vital needs that they're trying to get. And we will literally put these people into a fight or flight reality because of their need for healthcare benefits. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
literally that job they're applying for is to ensure that the medical needs of themselves and their loved ones are met, that they have coverage for appointments that they may not even be able to attend because they can't get the time off. And unless they like flex really hard of needing FMLA, or this is my sick time, I need to attend this, or I have cancer, or all these things on top of it. These are basic human needs. And if we're not able to recognize that people coming into our organizations already have a ton on their plate, if we can't understand that as leaders of a healthcare company, then shame on us.
I so agree. I was in that middle management where at that time I could bribe you with gift cards. I couldn't do that
Yeah,
anymore. The
yeah,
IRS
right.
took that away from me, saying, well, you have to count it as their compensation. And I'm like, so
Yeah,
you're telling me
yeah,
giving them a $25 gift card to go have dinner with their
yeah,
spouse, it's
right.
compensation? Oh, it was just so infuriating. Um,
Absolutely. You
Having to
can't
fill
win at
those
that point.
gaps. You can't win.
Yeah,
And so, then because the company took away my ability to give double time and triple time. So
yeah.
then it was gift cards, and then I couldn't do that anymore. And I was like, I have no incentive for them to come
That's
in with
it.
these extra gifts other than
And we
guilt.
wonder
And that
why they're
only went
upset.
so far. Hmm.
Yeah. And we wonder
Yeah.
why they leave.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's like when you're at that point and you see that, you see their faces, you have to, you're understanding those dynamics, and you're doing your best. You're trying to be innovative. You're coming up ways. What can we do to help them? What can we do to how can we help recognize it? And you're painting that picture for the leaders above you. You're saying, look, do you understand what you're asking me to do by telling me that they have to do this? Do you understand what you're asking me as a mid-level manager to do to these people? Do you know that so and so, is a caregiver on their off time, has 2 kids, this and that, is a single mom, is dealing with the medical diagnosis of their own, because you hear about it, because they come in exhausted,
Yeah.
and you want me to write them up when they're showing up after they're dealing with like whatever, and they all these challenges. Like, do you realize what you're telling me to do? And then so many people are experiencing that moral injury, right?
Yes.
That those violations of their values and integrity, because why did they get into healthcare? Because they're trying to relieve the suffering of others, because they're honorable human beings, because they care about others, because they're sensitive, because they care. And now, we're getting, quote, leaders. I don't call them leaders. I'm just saying people in positions of authority who,
Yes.
they drive a Lexus home at night and think everything's fine. They walk the halls. I don't hear any complaints. Everything must be fine. But and strategically avoiding the realities of like what's happening there, when they have the power and the authority to ultimately make significant changes, to advocate not just for their patients, but for their own staffs. And they just kind of turn a blind eye to that and take the paycheck. And that's why we experience, the burnout. And when we get honest about and when we have leaders who are willing to have integrity and to not take that paycheck and blindly turn an eye to what's happening in their hallways, and actually take the time to do the same thing we talked about before, that active listening to our staff. When we do that,
Well,
hey, then we get somewhere.
we used to have this thing called the open door policy, right? You're supposed to keep your door open in management so that people could come in and ask you questions and be open and all this stuff. And I'm like, all that's gone away to the wayside for, make sure you meet my metrics, because if I don't meet my metrics, then I don't get
That's
my
it.
bonus.
That's it.
And you get situations like Steward Healthcare, where they file bankruptcy, but a year before they're giving their executives $1 million bonuses.
Exactly. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's like you know that we're aware of that down here, don't you? Like,
Exactly.
you know that everybody
Yeah.
sees it. Like, are you like literally out of your mind? Like, are you so selfish that you will literally take that payout when you have people who have literally completed suicide, who have been your employees and are so burned out that they took their own lives, and you're willing to take that gazillion-dollar severance package
Well,
because, like, like it's reprehensible.
here's the thing. Um, we talk about how, you're the captain of the ship and you're supposed to go down with the ship. And I'm like, I don't see that at all. And for me, I'm like, if you're supposed to make these certain metrics and do so well so that you can get your bonus, if the rest of your company's not doing well, that you're not paying your vendors, that they've come and repossessed
Yeah.
hospital equipment, how dare you give yourself a bonus? You are doing a terrible job as a
Yep.
leader if the rest of your
Yep.
company is falling apart and it's on fire, but you got a yacht.
That's it.
I just
Yeah.
the lack of integrity um
Yeah.
is just astounding.
It's
And
mind blowing.
it is. And I don't understand that if the company is not doing well, no one gets a bonus as far as I'm concerned. Everybody
Right.
has to put in extra because we got to
Yeah.
turn this ship around.
Yep.
So we can talk about this in healthcare for a very long time. But I did want to kind of get some more information about your company and what it is that you do
Sure.
and how someone
Sure.
can reach out to you.
Sure. So I'm super grateful for everybody out there who is listening to this. Thank you for taking the time uh, to listen. If this is engaging to you or resonates with you, I would love to figure out ways to partner with anybody listening towards more emotionally intelligent organizations. And so what I focus on doing, and thank you so much, Tina, for your amazing, not just your service here as a nurse, but your drive for entrepreneurship and empowering people who watch your show and learning valuable lessons about how nurses are doing creative and innovative things. The cool thing is a phrase that I love to recount is you never neglect a good crisis. Like a crisis is a huge opportunity. So everything we've been talking about here is a huge opportunity for, if you are a leader, if you are somebody who cares about people, if you have seen these types of things happening in organizations and you just have a distaste in your mouth, you have experienced the trauma of being, shamed, of being told, you've been on the end of receiving those 74 phone calls a day from your quote leadership trying to get you to come in and work, and you've seen the suffering of others and you see the demand there for healthy organizations. One thing that I love to do is, as a part of wellpublic.org, it's a nonprofit I've just started, and what it is it focuses on all those noble organizations out there that are public service organizations. You've earned these grants, you've gotten these things that are there to create tremendous outcomes for the public or raise awareness about certain challenges like addiction, like substance use disorders, like mental illness, like poverty related challenges that people experience, overcoming awful realities in our world and helping people overcome adversity. You've gotten grants for that, and maybe you don't have enough staff to get the outcome that you're looking for, or you need a tech related support to help take those grassroots efforts, those amazing, honorable people who are out there doing that great work, and you just want to magnify that impact. I specialize with my team in helping you create that impact. So we have all sorts of things. My spiel, you can learn more at wellpublic.org that you see there. But we do in-person, hybrid, and online events. We do social media outreach that impresses your board members. We create custom solutions and ease of grant reporting. So if you have grant money that you're trying to utilize in a way that creates profound impact, we can help take what you're currently doing. We can either do it for you altogether, or we can add to your already tremendous staff, do an analysis of how you're creating that impact currently and how we can supplement that with what I and my team do. And we will create tremendous outcomes for you that will have your board members excited, that'll have your community engaged, and that will create outcomes, life-changing outcomes. We're getting back to the purity of that service that we're talking about, Tina, that we're talking about, that healthcare is intended for, that healthcare in its purest sense is there to do. We do this with all sorts of engaging organizations. We do it with education, we do it with tech, we do it with well-being focuses, and we do it in a way where we create emotionally intelligent solutions. So if you have a grant or you're creating a societal outcome that makes our society more kind, more compassionate, more smart, more caring, we're here to magnify that and to empower you in doing that. Reach out today.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It sounds like you're doing such great and important work. And I applaud you for that. So, our last question is if you had one piece of advice for a budding entrepreneur, what would it be?
Care about people. That's the beginning of everything. How do you, if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to create something to meet the demand of someone else, right? There's a demand for something. These are core business principles, right? For entrepreneurship, it's perfect to be a nurse or a medical professional because you see the demand of the human spirit. People come into your clinic. They come in, whether it's a mental health clinic, whether it's an ER, whether it's a internal medicine clinic, no matter how you serve as a medical professional, you're meeting a demand, right? And you see the needs of people. You're on the front lines. You're seeing where people are suffering. So you have every day an opportunity to develop a solution. And when you see the suffering of others and you create that solution, and I can help you with this too. If you need to talk it out or develop that vision, I can do some coaching with you. But if you see a way where you want to create a solution to that demand that's there, some of those core demands that speak to the spirit, the human spirit, the core of what we need as people, that relieves suffering in some way, then you're perfectly positioned to create some sort of solution and then to make it happen. And that's why people are willing to pay you money for it or to give of their time to experience it. You're in a great position to do that. So I would say care about people. That's my takeaway. Number one, very beginning, is care about people. And then as you provide that solution to others, care about people during the process of providing your solution. And then it's a win, 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 win.
I so agree. I always tell people I'm working on the first two commandments to love the Lord and then to love my neighbor. Once I figured those two out, I can worry about all the other stuff, right? And so
just care everything else for that now.
Yep, that's it. So, all right. Well, I want to thank you for being here. This has been tremendous. I can't wait for your episode to go up. But for those of you that are listening, this is the Nurse Shark Academy show. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Those of you that are listening to our audio podcast on Podbean or wherever you get your podcast, please leave us a like and a comment, and we greatly appreciate it. And share this information to other nurses that you know or anyone else that you think that might be interested. If you have an interesting guest that you think would be great for our show, reach out to me at the nursesharkacademy.biz. And you can always go to the nursesharkacademy.biz to find out about our events that are coming up. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz. Thank you for listening to the Nurse Shark Academy show wherever you get your podcasts or watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you'll know when all of our episodes come out. If you want further information, you can contact us on the nursesharkacademy.biz.